KwaZulu-Natal government is hard at work putting the finishing touches to what will become the province's very first 8 billion rand trade port. The project was started in August 2007 and part of it became operational in May 2010. The man in charge of the success of the project is Rohan Persad. He explains that the project has been in the pipeline from as early as 1994. It was spearheaded by then MEC for Economic Development, Jacob Zuma.
When we achieved democracy in 1994, one of the first initiatives that was taken by our president, and our now president Jacob Zuma, was really to get an international airport off the ground, because in tourism terms there was a lot of interest from the charter market to come in because they liked the product, in a sense that KwaZulu-Natal offered a world within a world, if you like. The airports company and obviously their strategic partners had opposed a new airport in Durban because a lot of the focus was in Joburg to make that a hub. Airlines were also changing their strategies between trying to do point-to-point to a hub and spoke, and they all identified Joburg as the hub. So the issue was that we required a new way in which we approached the project. And we began to look all over the world. What makes global economies successful? What makes them competitive? What allows them to do what they do in the global supply chain? So we looked at, in the States, we looked at Alliance, Texas, where Ross Perot Jr., who stood as an independent candidate at one stage for president, bought an old military airport that was next to Houston. And Houston is a hub airport. And he converted that into a full freight airport. Within 10 years, he had developed a massive cargo industry. So it began to point us in the other directions. We looked at Schiphol, we looked at Rotterdam, we then looked at Dubai, we looked at some Australian airports, and we began to develop our thinking. Well, if we started to look at continentally here, where would such a platform make sense? And quite clearly, Durban makes sense because we've already got the seaport, and what was required to get a true multimodal logistics platform was air capability.
Indeed, Durban as a seaport city didn't enjoy the advantage of an air freight terminal, and the brains behind the Dube TradePort felt that coupled with an air freight capacity, a greater efficiency in logistics could be realized.
Our whole approach to the project was to address the issue of logistics in South Africa. And at the moment, our logistics are about 14% of GDP. In competitive economies, they're between 6 and 7%. We think that tying the Dube TradePort to the existing infrastructure will begin to provide competitive advantages to a lot of airport-dependent users, aviation users, and we'll be able to create far more efficient logistics.
The idea is to create an international trade platform and become a global player in air cargo. There are also plans to expand the development into a city with employment opportunities for thousands of locals.
In the old days, you used to build an airport and all you thought about was the terminal. With new generation infrastructure, when you start to build runways as big as these and terminals as big, they're really stimuluses to airport cities. The Dutch like to call them airport cities, but the more global practice now is to call them aerotropolises. In other words, they're the start of massive airport settlements and industries and communities that begin to depend on aviation. So the next big leap for us would be to address the issue of light rail transportation to move passengers. That will stimulate a lot of development along that line. We've got a proposed layout for that. There's truck routes that we're going to service cargo that also is going to open up a lot of warehousing, secondary warehousing, manufacturing within that region. There'll be clearly passenger routes. So a lot of the infrastructure, if you like, and the airport and the trade port begin to become like a magnet for investment and infrastructure spend. And that stimulates, if it happens in a planned way, purpose-built airport city, aerotropolis. And we think that that's one of the first developments in Southern Africa at least. But these things over time stimulate hundreds of thousands of jobs. And I think that's the role we want to play over time.
The Dube TradePort boasts a fully mechanized and state-of-the-art trade zone. This cargo terminal is one of many others planned for the development and can process up to 100,000 tons of cargo per year. The facility will be operated exclusively by world-renowned aviation handling group World Flight Services. The deal will see its airline and logistics clients enjoying world-class facilities at the TradePort. WFS operates some 120 cargo terminals in North America, Europe and Asia. They were bowled over by the modern and efficient technology.
Well, it makes the operation very efficient because we can do everything at the touch of a button. In the cargo industry, there's plenty for guys to be doing rather than worrying about trying to mend or repair or push on old antiquated equipment. So this is very, very easy. We can call the flight by the touch of a button. The machine will do most of the work for us, so we can concentrate on making sure that service levels are met in other areas of the business.
For now, only one international carrier operates from the Dube TradePort, but as the good news spreads about the services, more carriers can and will be accommodated.
Well, at the moment, the only international airline into Durban is obviously Emirates, but there has been a lot of interest from other airlines. Obviously, the problem we had is Emirates moved into the old airport, which had limited capacity in terms of runway length and obviously the planes it could handle. So Emirates took a very bold jump to move into there, so it was very easy for them to transform and come here. A lot of other airlines are now showing interest, but apart from anything, the length of the runways increased to 3.7 kilometres, which can handle the wide-body aircraft, and plus the route as well. There's a lot of people that are flying via Johannesburg at the moment, from the Durban area, from the KZN area, that are flying onwards internationally. So this place will only go up. There's absolutely no doubt about it in my mind at all. A lot of interest already, a lot of interest.
We're very keen on the global market and global companies. So we're very, very interested in getting in investment that depends, or companies that depend on 24-hour procurement cycles. So in electronics, for example, you'll find that there are component parts that need to give in a price, and they need to deliver within 24 hours if they get those contracts awarded. Also, companies that depend on last-minute assembly, also very air freight dependent. We are in discussions with a lot of local companies that have a big part of their supply chain in air freight, but these would be relocations. So our marketing strategy really isn't going to be building up in the next 2 or 3 years, but it's going to be very focused around those companies that make sense for the cargo business, and then the connectivity issues, because we've got to fill these freighters, we've got to fill these flights that come in.
Adjacent to the cargo terminal is a trade house which will see goods transported via a conveyor tunnel connected to the cargo terminal. Here, clearing agents will be able to process their goods to their final destinations.
Well, the trade house is designed and is sort of an extension of the cargo terminal. So basically, the tenants in this building would collect their air freight from the cargo terminal, and once the conveyor system is working, it will come directly into the trade house, and then from there they distribute their goods. So it's working together with the cargo operations of Dube TradePort. The building has got about 24 units, and we've got 19 tenants like Rolex, Safco, Menzies. They are freight forwarders, logistics agents, consolidators, clearing agents.
Although still a new idea, the trade house is fast becoming a real option for clearing agents keen on taking advantage of the convenience of basing their operations here.
The operational expenses will be less because they base right here, so they don't have to bring their trucks from, like, say, the Durban CBD or other areas. They right here and collect the goods, and then it's just to deliver.
An agri-zone will also benefit from close proximity to air freight facilities. Plans to develop handling facilities for perishable goods will see this project take off in a big way. This greenhouse project is the biggest of its kind in South Africa and is set to take the local growers industry to the next big level.
One of the key reasons for the project going ahead here also was to empower people from KZN and to train them up in state-of-the-art facilities, so that when they have progressed to another stage and they've passed their exams and done their practical qualifications, they can go to their own farms or communities and set up similar structures, probably not glass, but similar growing conditions in their own communities, and then start commercial operations for themselves. And in turn, that produce will end up going through the airport if it's exported, and support the airport facilities as well.
The greenhouses will support the growing of vegetables and sunflowers as well. The idea is to secure markets locally, and later on international markets will be explored.
We've got 3 different phases. The first phase that's been completed is called Block C. It's a greenhouse of 8 hectares, 4 hectares for cucumbers, 4 hectares for tomatoes, and then there's a 2,000 square meter growing up area. Then the next phase is called Block A, where we're growing 4 hectares of sweet peppers. And the last phase, Block D, is 4 hectares of flowers. The greenhouses are 7 meters high to the gutters, and that capacity gives you a big air volume inside and stabilizes your climate. So those are the greenhouses that are being put into place now.
Exciting times indeed for both KZN and South Africa. Watch the space, as we could see Africa's very first aerotropolis in our lifetime.